Peace family, this is Ayapo Yapa, and this is the Drapetomaniac podcast. I am the HDIC, the head Drapetomaniac in charge, and I welcome you.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to make sure that you listeners are listening to the Drapetomaniac podcast on doayamedia.com. You are, right?
Do you know the reason that most people prefer to go to work for someone else than to build their own job, create their own position, go into business for themselves? It's because when you work for someone else, more or less, you know that you're going to be going in every day. You're going to do your work. You're going to come home, and at the end of the week, at the end of every 2 weeks, or at the end of the month, depending on how you're paid, you're going to receive pay. If you don't go into work, you don't get paid. But if you're at work and you're doing your job, you can expect that payment. There's a feeling of security that comes with that. It's a false security, but there is a feeling of security that comes with that. When you go out on your own to build your business, and you have to build a client base, you have to do marketing, you have to worry about your products, you have all these different things that you have to concern yourself with, then it is a harder proposition. Plus, you're putting all this time and all this energy in, and you're not sure that you're going to get a return. Unlike when you go in to work for someone else, and then you can expect to be paid at the end of that pay period. Well, I think that the same is true when it comes to separating from this system. We are attached in many, many, many ways to this system. Some of it we're conditioned to be attached to, and some of it we're attached for practical reasons, and some we're attached for emotional reasons. It's like any other relationship. The way that we're attached practically is that we live in this country, the United States. We live in this country, and therefore we have to deal with things on the level of living within this country. So you need to speak English. You need to be able to use dollars and cents and so on. You have to rent a place or buy a place or eat food and drive to work or whatever. So and go to school. We have all these things that you have to do. So it's a very practical matter of having to do different things. And so when you're talking about separating, we think about the practical matters. Emotionally, we're attached because when we think of the blood, sweat, and tears and the suffering of our ancestors, in addition to what our people still do to build this country and to build it up and to have created so much wealth within this country that we don't have access to. On an emotional level, we're like, well, if we separate, if we leave, and when I say leave, I don't mean necessarily physically. I'm always saying that. I'm talking about you can separate psychologically, but when you separate and you're like, I have to leave all this behind. I have to just give them all this that my ancestors, sweated and died to build and suffered to build and were enslaved to build. And then I come along and I still paid into this system and helped to buttress this system and create the system and work within this system and so on. And then I'm expected to just say, well, to white people, well, you can just keep it. I'll go and start building on my own. That's tantamount to leaving a job that you've put a lot of time in, and then you're like, I'm going to strike out on my own or go out on my own. And I may or may not be successful, but in the meantime, everything that you've done to help build that company, to help uplift that company, to bring money into that company that you're leaving, they get to keep all that. and you're leaving basically with nothing but the shirt on your back to start all over again. And it's emotional. So, when it comes to separating, in a way, what I'm starting to understand is there's not as much of a choice for us as we may believe that we have. See, we think that we have a choice, and for a lot of us, we think that we have power within this system. And I submit that we don't. Our true power would come from separating from this system. Our true power would come from doing things on our own and living according to our own standards and not judging ourselves by the standards of someone else or some other group or someone who has designed a system that benefits them and is specifically constructed in a way that it puts us at a disadvantage. So just as with the presidential debates that just happened a couple days ago, I was making the comment that we have been zeroed out in terms of descendants of enslaved Africans in America. We have been zeroed out, meaning that you had the ADOS movement, and they're saying what we need to do is bring pressure on these politicians and these leaders and so on, and let them know you're not going to get our support unless you give us something. Well, what happens when you have a consensus among those who are running or those who are in power that none of them will address us, none of them will do anything for us, right? What has happened is that you don't have any bargaining chip. You don't have any way to threaten them because you say, well, I'm going to throw all my support behind this one. And so because of that, whoever your opponent is will have the advantage because they will then have the support of the black community. But what happens when, again, none of them address us and they know that they're all purposely not addressing us, as we just saw a couple days ago, then that basically puts them all flush and in effect zeroes us out. We have been zeroed out. And I made the comment a couple days ago that in terms of these leaders, it's like talking to someone who's deaf. You see someone talking to someone deaf, say they're at a dinner table and they face the deaf person and say, hand me the salt. And then I would say, they can't hear you, they're deaf. Then the person said, oh, they're deaf? Hand me the salt! And start yelling it to them. They can't hear you. And the solution is not to talk louder. They cannot hear you. And the principle is the same when it comes to these politicians. They don't hear us. And our solution is, well, we need to yell louder and make our presence known. They still can't hear you and they still can't see you. They're deaf and blind to you. They still can't hear you. They still can't see you. And then after they pay absolutely no attention to you, just like they did on last Tuesday during the debates, as soon as they show that they're all paying absolutely no attention to you or addressing you, predictably, we start saying, well, we need to talk, we need to yell even louder. They can't hear you and they can't see you. The answer is not yelling louder. The answer is not jumping up and down and making yourself heard and making your presence known. They don't care. They don't hear you. They don't see you. And we have effectively been zeroed out. We have no power within the construct of this system. The only way to have power is within our own system, with our own standards of success and our own standards of what works for us. But if we keep basing everything upon the American dream, if we keep basing everything upon materialism and having this and having that, then we're setting ourselves up to fail, because what we're aiming for is something that's not attainable. And it's not this unattainable because we don't have the talent or the abilities to attain it. It's unattainable because we're doing it within the construct of a system that is designed for us not to succeed or for us to fail. Once we have a system that's our own system, you know, my wife said something very interesting, and she was very right in what she was saying. If you notice, when black people do things and we are not under necessarily the influence of this system, when we do things, when we make art, we make art for the art of it. When we play a sport, we play a sport for the love of the game. When we create things, when we discover things, it's for the betterment of everyone concerned. Our immediate go-to is not, how can I monetize this? How can I take this and exploit it so that I can get rich? Now I have to add this caveat. Many of our people in this country and some around the world, because of what we have been taught and have beaten into our minds about materialism and so on, right? That is a go-to, but that is not our natural state. That is not our natural state. So when we do things, if we are the type of a person who is like, I have to figure out how to monetize this, I have to figure out how to exploit people and so on, that is not the natural state of a black person. What has happened is that we've been infected with this disease, this cancer of materialism. But once we drop that as a be-all and end-all, and I'm talking about materialism and this whole chasing the carrot, right, then we can start to come into our right minds, see things for what they are, and understand that the best things in life may not necessarily be able to be bought. Especially when it comes to relationship, when it comes to happiness, when it comes to joy, when it comes to peace, when it comes to a sunrise and a sunset, walking on the beach or just sitting on a porch and enjoying yourself, your family, your friends. You don't need a whole lot of money for that. Sure, you have to pay rent, you have to buy a house, all these different things. But living freely is a reward and a comfort in itself. I would rather be free with a few dollars than have all kinds of pressure on me and have a mansion and a Bentley sitting out in front of it, or two. It is time that we stop counting on people who don't have our best interest at heart and really aren't about us. We need to be about our own people and not trying to get the system to retrofit or to change for us. A system that I ask time and time and time again, why would they want to change for us? And they're on top. Why would someone who is on top and has every advantage freely put themselves at a disadvantage just because I'm asking them to or telling them to? It makes no sense whatsoever. So just think about that. This is the Drapetomaniac Podcast. I'm the HDIC, the head Drapetomaniac in charge, Ayapo Yapa. just continue to listen to us on Doaya Media. And I thank you for being here and taking the time to spend a little time with me and listen to what I have to say and consider what I have to say. Maybe you'll come to the same conclusions, maybe you won't. But either way, I appreciate you listening and taking the time. And as always, I will see you on the run.
Thank you again for listening to the Drapedomaniac podcast. Tune in next week at doiamedia.com. DOIAMEDIA.com. And again, we'll catch you on the run. Peace.